Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Allison if you're new here, and welcome to Wonderland. Today we are going to be talking about tips and tricks and books that get me out of a reading slump. I've experienced some reading slumps in the past year or so. I always used to think like reading slumps aren't real, like I don't understand them, and then I had one and I was like, oh, that's what everyone's talking about. So I want to talk about things that help me get out of a reading slump and books that really like jump-started me back into loving to read, and just go over those. So my first tip is to reread books that you know you love. Series that you know you have a very special connection to, or characters that make you feel safe, you know, something like that. I feel like that really helps me get back into the love of reading because it shows me why I started reading and why I love to read. A couple series that are my personal favorites are anything Cassie Clare. As you can tell, I have a lot of Cassandra Clare up here. I normally lean more towards the Dark Artifice series or the original Mortal Instruments series, mostly the last half of the series with Sebastian Morgenstern in it. I just really find that I love those books, and I will reread in the series, or I'll reread one book in the series because I already know what's happening, and I will just fall back in love with the characters and reading in general. Another one is The Selection. I know a lot of people don't like The Selection. I personally love The Selection. I love Max and Jennifer and Marley. Those two characters just fill me with so much joy. I also have a very special connection with Kira, and I think that I've been watching her when she used to be on YouTube a lot, so I definitely fell in love with that book series due to that. But when I want something light and fun and girls in pretty dresses, The Selection definitely is one that I go towards. And plus, like, how do you not love Max and Jennifer? My second tip is to utilize audiobooks. I know audiobooks are like kind of a weird thing. Some people think they're reading, some people don't. I think any form of reading is reading, no matter if you're listening to it or reading fan fiction. I just think that if you're consuming something, you're reading. I found that the production of audiobooks have grown leaps and bounds in the past 5 years or so. I definitely really like an audiobook. I've been looking naked this whole time. Swear I'm not. I found some that are really good. One of my favorites is Sadie. I love this audiobook because it does take place in a podcast form in the book. It's following a podcast of the disappearance of Sadie, and it's also following Sadie as she disappears or goes on this hunt to find a killer. It's just so interesting because I love true crime podcasts, and to incorporate a true crime podcast in a fictional sense was just really cool. And I listened to that audiobook all the way through just in one sitting, and it was just fascinating. Another really well produced audiobook is the Illuminae Files series. Those 3 books, their audiobooks are so good, and it makes you feel like you're sitting in like a cinema watching a movie, and you know, it's a sci-fi movie, but it's also told in this really interesting format when you read the book. So I listened to the audiobook while following along with the book because I wanted to see like the visuals and the transcripts. The audiobook is just out of this world with the sound effects and the narrator, and I just really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for a good audiobook, definitely check those out. Number 3 is read outside your preferred genre. Sometimes I feel like I get into a reading slump because I'm reading too much of the same genre. So my preferred genres are anything fantasy, anything just not in this world. So I definitely will try to jump out of my comfort zone when I am in a reading slump. These are just kind of 2 examples of how I pull myself out of that genre. So if I'm reading strictly fantasy, I will jump into maybe sci-fi. So The Host, the Illuminae Files is sci-fi. Just something that isn't necessarily fantasy, but it still feels like fantasy and incorporates different ideals with the genre. I really enjoyed that. Another one is just going from strictly contemporary novels, and I will switch into maybe an urban fantasy, so it still is contemporary in the sense that you are in the real world, you're in a world that is familiar to you, but it has fantasy into it, so like vampires or witches or warlocks, you know, something like that. My next tip is read authors that you know that you enjoy. So if an author has a large catalog, read something else of theirs. So when I look at someone who has a large catalog, I think of like Alexandra Bracken. I read something of hers, or Leigh Bardugo. She has a pretty large catalog now. Or Holly Black. You know, they've been writing for a long time. They have multiple books in multiple different genres. Have books in children's and in young adult. Leigh Bardugo has an adult book. So just try to find something that you like from an author that you enjoy, and maybe read something new of theirs, because you know, you're familiar with their writing, you understand their world building, so it's not necessarily learning something new about an entirely new writing process or writing style. It's just easy and you enjoy it because you know you like those authors. Now we're gonna get into books that have helped me get out of reading slumps, and I have 8 of them, and I'll just talk about them as if they were my children. There's also gonna be some like cliche ones that like everyone suggests, but I feel like I have to suggest them as well because they did help me. The first book I will never stop talking about, and it's the Violet Theory series by Elodie Iver. There's the Violet Theory and When the Blackbird Sings. Those are the first 2 books. They're out. I just love them. They have the aspects of Pirates of the Caribbean, but also like a sci-fi element, but also like a Westworld element, just all smashed into one, into this really fun world. And it's kind of dystopian in the second one. I just love it. The characters are fun, the adventure is fun, and the mystery element just keeps building and building and building. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. I love Elodie. I love this book, and it just makes me happy. The next series is the ACOTAR series. This is very standard. A lot of people have read it, but I do feel like the story and the idea of, you know, them being retellings is very appealing to people, and there's a lot of books. It has a really big fandom. You know, it has characters that are relatable to everybody, and you find a character that you like or you don't like, and you know, people vehemently like them or vehemently hate them in the fandom. So I don't know, I read this when I was in a reading slump in the pandemic, and it definitely just forced me into my obsessive reading all over again. Next is another vampire series, and this is actually an older vampire series, and that would be the House of Night books by PC and Kirsten Cass. I read these when I was, I want to say, a freshman, or maybe I was even in 8th grade. My mom bought the books for me, and there was like 4 out, and now there's like 12 in the series, but they're so much fun. They follow a girl named Zoe who, in her world, vampires exist, and the way that you know a vampire exists is they have a crescent moon in the middle of the forehead, and she finds out that she is a very powerful fledgling, which is a vampire that hasn't fully turned. So when she does discover she is a fledgling, she goes to this school for vampires who are transitioning into being a vampire, and she finds a bunch of friends, but she also finds that there's a lot of corruption in this vampire world, and it's one of those series that I just truly love and I will always love, and there's so much to it, and there's a spin-off series to it as well, and it's just a really fun take on vampires because they're not your typical vampires. Plus, they're in a school setting, so it just, anything in like a school setting, like a boarding school, is my favorite kind of book. Next, we're gonna talk about a book that isn't probably for everyone, so I would check trigger warnings. This is an 18+ book, and I mean that in every way possible, but it did pull me out of a reading slump, and someone suggested me reading it. And I don't normally read these kinds of books, and that would be Den of Vipers. This book, it is just smut. That's the entire premise of what this book is, but it's good. Like, I don't know, I don't know how to describe it. It's just good. It just kept me reading. I didn't want to put it down, and at the end of this book I was like, what did I just read? But like, I liked it, and I want to read more stuff like this. So then I fell into the whole universe of reading like romance smut books, and I've been stuck there for a little bit. I haven't read like a ton, but this book, it'll pull you out of a reading slump. and throw you into a world that you might have not known that you would have enjoyed. And the last book is Slay. I love this book. It is a contemporary and it follows a girl who runs and creates a online gaming for the Black community, which is called Slay. And during the course of this novel, she finds herself kind of in a little bit of a pickle because a hacker has infiltrated the Slay community and is threatening her with legal action and exposing her because no one knows that she is the creator of Slay. And I just truly love this book. It was fun, it was exciting, and it's so cool to see a video game and creation of a video game or like an AI game in a book format, and I ate it up. So if you're looking to read a contemporary, that is one that I highly suggest. So those are my tips and tricks on how to get out of a reading slump. I hope that this helped you. I hope this gives you some ideas of books to read or genres to read. And if you do read any of these books or have read any of these books, leave that down in the comments below because I'd love to talk about them. There's some of my favorite books that I just will talk about forever and just want other people to read them because some of them aren't very common. But yeah, that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you next time in Wonderland, loves. Bye.